Okay, so we just created an employees in Los Angeles query. Now we're going to create an employees in the Northwest region query, and I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly and easily. And then we're going to spend the rest of this video just working on criteria examples, and I'm going to show you just a bunch of different ways to use criteria to make your queries really powerful. So instead of recreating this from scratch, what we're going to do is just going to right click on this and we're going to go to copy, or we could alternately say just Control C with the keypad, and then we're going to right click again, and you've seen this before. We click paste and it's creating a copy of this query. So we need to rename it, otherwise it'll just call it copy of and whatever we copied. We're going to call it Employees Northwest Region. So we're just going to say NW region. Click OK, and you can see now it's created that. So let's go ahead and close our Los Angeles query, and we'll open this one up. And when we go to design view, you'll see that it's exactly the same. But we're going to modify this to make it so that we can search for the Northwest region, which is our cities in Portland and Seattle. So all we have to do to make our new query is to write in Portland. And remember, it doesn't matter if you capitalize or not. And I just arrowed down, and then we'll type in Seattle. And let's go look at it. And these are all of our employees from the Northwest region. Okay, so that's really simple. So now we have three queries where you can sort all of the employees by city. You can go for employees just in Los Angeles, or you can go for the employees just in the Northwest region. And in this one, if we wanted to, we could actually show the cities, and we could even drag this over to the very beginning, and we could sort this alphabetically. And what that will do is it'll show the city that they're in. It sorts the cities alphabetically so they're organized, and then you'll notice it's still sorting our last names alphabetically within each city. So it goes F, F, S, V, and then starting with Seattle we go back to G, J, and S. Because remember, our sort order in design view goes from left to right. So first it sorts our cities alphabetically, and then it sorts our employees. Okay, so we'll take one more look at that in datasheet view. That's our employees by Northwest region query. Now we're going to close that one, and yes, we want to save the changes, and that's finished. Now let's look at a bunch of different examples of how to use criteria to do your calculations. Let's make a copy of our employees by city. And we're going to leave this one with the name of copy of, because we're just using this as an example, so we don't want to get it confused with our real queries. So we'll just click OK. And we'll right click on that and go to design view. Okay, so this is the original query that we created. And as you remember, it's pretty straightforward. It's just first name, last name, phone number, and then the city that they work in, all alphabetized in ascending order. The first thing I want to show you is how to create a parameter query. The way we do that is we put brackets, square brackets, into the criteria row, and then when we run it, it's going to ask us to enter the parameter value. So in other words, before it gives us any information back in our query, we have to give it some information first. And where this particular parameter is in our city field, we need to enter a city. And it's going to use that to sort the data for our query. So let's go ahead and just put Seattle and hit OK. And you can see it brings back all Seattle. Now we can go back to design view again, and we can run that again. And again, it's going to ask us for a parameter. We can then type in Los Angeles, and it's going to bring us back all the employees in Los Angeles. So the parameter is a very powerful way to create queries because of the flexibility that it offers you. Okay, but one thing you'll notice is when we run this, we don't have anything instructing us what to put in here. So that could get pretty confusing. If we try and type in a first name like Bob, it's not going to bring anything back because our parameter is for the city field. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to basically enter in some text here to give some instructions. So between the brackets, I'm going to put enter employee city. Okay, now let's try and run it again by going to our datasheet view. And now you can see that it's specifically asking us for the employee's city. Or you could word this to say enter city of employment or whatever is specific enough so that you know that if you put Seattle in here, you're going to get a list of all the people in Seattle. Okay, so that's a parameter. And since this is just a practice query, we're just going to kind of delete things as we go and do new things. So let's do a wildcard. A wildcard is essentially when you use an asterisk in your criteria. The wildcard allows you to search for a specific string of text, but with some variables. So for instance, if we put the asterisk and then LAND, we're going to search for all the cities that have the word LAND in them and something before LAND. So when we run this query, you'll see that it comes back with all of the employees in Portland. So our wildcard, the asterisk represents the PORT. Okay? Let me show you a different version of that. And you'll notice it puts some syntax in here. Whenever you just enter text into the criteria for that is like. In other words, it's looking for something like LAND. Okay? And if we move the asterisk to the end, let's run that. See, we get nothing. If we had the city Lander, Wyoming, LANDER, then it would show up. Okay, and let me show you one more version of that. If we put an asterisk right at the beginning, so in other words, LAND is surrounded by asterisks. We'll run that. And you notice now it's showing Orlando, because it's allowing characters on either side of the text string LAND. So that's how we use an asterisk to create a wildcard search. Let's talk about what we'd do if we want to find any blank records. We just type in is null. And when we go to the datasheet view, you'll see it's coming back with nothing. But if we had in our table, if we had one that said first name, last name, phone number, but it was missing the city information, then it would bring that one up. And so the is null is a great way to look for essentially missing data in your database. Okay, so that's null. Let's get rid of that. Let's do some numerical criteria. Let's add our employee ID in here. And I'm going to drag this to the front of the columns. Okay, so a few simple ones are greater than, less than, and equal to. Okay, so if we say greater than 10 and we run that query for our employee ID numbers, so you can see it shows all of our employee IDs that are over 10. And of course we could do that as less than as well. And we'll run that. You can see now we have all of the employee IDs that are less than 10. And obviously when we do equal to 10, you can imagine what we're going to see. We show employee ID number 10. Okay, so those are some really simple calculations that you can do. We can also say, use the words between, say 5 and 15. And so you can see we have all the numbers from 5 up to 15. we can do less than 5 or greater than 15. Just going to clean that up a little bit. And that's going to give us the numbers that are outside of 5 and 15. So less than 5 or greater than 15. Run that. So you can see we have the numbers that are less than 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the numbers that are greater than 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Okay, so those are some examples of just simple calculations that you can create in your criteria. So let's actually hit Control Z and go back to our previous one, between 5 and 15, and then we're going to go to the cities here, and we're going to put Seattle. Okay, so this is going to do all of the employee ID numbers that are between 5 and 15 and are located in the city of Seattle. Okay, so there we go. It shows we have 2 people that are between 5 and 15 for their employee ID numbers and are located in Seattle. And of course we can change this back to our less than or greater than 15 and in Seattle, and you'll see we get a different result. So now we just have Francisco Garcia. Okay, so that's the AND criteria. We've already looked at the OR criteria, where you would essentially say Seattle or Portland and put that down here. And you'll notice that if we want to do an AND criteria, it always wants to be on this same row. But if we're doing an OR criteria, then it would be below it in the same field. And you'll notice also that you can do a whole bunch of OR criteria. So if we wanted, we could say Seattle or Portland or Boise, for example. Now let me show you how to create a formula that will do a calculation. Now one thing you'll notice is we have our first name and our last name in separate columns. And this is good because if we want to sort by last name or we want to sort by first name, it makes the query process more effective. But let's just say that we wanted to have both of these in the same field. We can actually create a formula and a new field that will do that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select both of these. I can select that one and then press Shift and select, and then I'm going to delete them. Now I'm going to create a new column, and I'm going to put the formula right into the field name here. And I have this copied, so I'm just going to paste it, and then I'll expand this out so you can see what we're looking at. Okay, so this first section where it says full name, and then you see the little colon. This is the new name of the field. So instead of it being called city or first name, it's now called full name. And then the colon separates it from our formula, which is this. And remember, we used these square brackets down here for a parameter. In this case, the square brackets are now defining the fields that we're using in our formula. So our formula is taking the first name field from here, and then it's adding one space between them, and then it's adding the last name field from here. And let's run this. Oh, we have to show it by clicking that, and we're going to drag it over to a better, more logical spot. So we'll drag it over right there. Okay, now let's run that and see what we get. Okay, now you can see instead of showing our separate names, it's actually grabbing the first name and last name out of 2 different fields and combining them along with the space in a new field. So that's just kind of a simple text calculation. Now one important thing to note is that if we type this in wrong, for instance we say first aim and we forget to put the N in there, then when we go to run this, it's going to get confused and think that we're trying to create a parameter. So it's going to say, what is the first aim? And obviously that's not going to work. So the moral of that story is, It's very important that you have these field names within the square brackets when you're doing a formula exactly right. So we can cancel out of that, put our n back in there, run that again, and there it is again. Okay, so those are just a few ways that you can use criteria to manipulate your data in your query to get more specific results from your data. And what we'll do with this is just delete this. We'll close it from here. Doesn't matter if we save it or not. And we go to here and right click and delete it. And we say yes. And then in the next section, we're going to actually use these queries that we've created to design reports that you could just generate with the click of a button. So if your boss said, hey, I need a list of all the employees by city alphabetically, then you're just going to be able to click a button, generate a really nice printable report that you could then email. And that way you can impress your boss and make them really happy.